In this video, I'm going to be walking you through 10 tips to improve your forest photography. So forests are notoriously one of the most difficult environments to shoot in, but I'm going to walk you through a few tips to make it that much easier for you. So let's start with tip number one, which is to squint your eyes if you are overwhelmed. So if you're ever walking through a forest and you see a million subjects everywhere, you can't figure out what to put as the main idea, then just squint your eyes a little bit and make everything blurry. And then focus on whatever stands out to you. And if you see a big object with a lot of color, then you should make that your subject. And then from there, you're gonna wanna try and figure out how to isolate that subject from the chaotic environment around it as easily as you can. So move all around that subject now and find the best way to capture a minimalist shot of it in the forest. The second tip I have is to keep in mind that forests get dark very fast. So especially if you're in an area with a lot of leaves and tree cover over the sky, then an hour and a half before sunset, you're gonna see the last of that light and it's going to get dark very fast. So make sure you have a flashlight, make sure you have extra batteries, make sure you have your trail maps ready to go so that you can actually navigate your way back to your car once you're done shooting. The third tip I have is for fall colors. So how do you find the best areas to shoot those brilliant yellow and red colors? And the best advice I have for you is to check the foliage maps of a certain area as you get close to fall. So the interesting thing about fall colors is they vary very heavily based off where you are in the world. So in the United States, for example, there are certain regions that are literally several months apart from each other when the leaves are gonna be the best colors. So you're gonna wanna check those maps when you get closer. And this is also important because the weather based on that year can change when those leaves are going to be changing. So even if one year, say it's in early November, another year it could be 2 weeks into October where you're getting those peak seasonal colors. So make sure you always check those foliage maps before you go out and shoot. Another thing you can do is speak to the local park rangers, and they'll generally have a very good idea of when the peak times for that particular region are. The fourth tip I have is to look for different colored plants, trees, and leaves. So this is the easiest way to find an awesome subject within a forest. So if you see a ton of green trees and you see one tree that's got a lot of awesome white branches that really pops, that's a perfect subject. Or if you see a branch that has all these nice green leaves, but one of them is purple, that's a great opportunity for a subject. So look for those singular outlier plants or trees, even if it's just a dead tree amongst a giant field of alive trees. You wanna look for those different variations in color in forests, and this will give you a giant edge. The fifth tip I have is for shooting in very humid climates. So if you're shooting in a rainforest in Costa Rica, for example, it's going to be very wet and very humid. And this means your gear is going to be getting a little bit damp a lot, your camera gear is gonna be damp, and you're most likely gonna be wet as well. So the way I've found to mitigate this is to buy these little silicone gel packets and disperse them in your camera bag. So this will help absorb some of the moisture in your camera bag while your lens is resting there for the night. So that way when the next day you pop your camera out to get a cool shot that's happening very fast, you're not gonna have all this humidity popping up on the lens because those silica gel packets are going to absorb them. You can find these on Amazon or literally anywhere online. They're often included with little food packets. So you know those little gel things that say do not eat, you can just use those in your camera bag. The sixth tip I have is to look for areas in the forest where the light is balanced. So the hard thing about forests is that you'll have pockets of light that are very bright, especially if you're shooting in midday lighting with not a lot of foliage above, and then pockets that are very dark. And being able to capture that dynamic range in a camera, even if you exposure blend, can get a little bit difficult. So I would advise shooting in areas where there's more tree coverage, you get that lighter light, and especially on days where it's foggy or misty outside, it's gonna make that forest photography much easier. The seventh tip I have is for shooting macro shots, and that's to bring a little beanbag with you. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to shoot a mushroom or a bug on the ground and your tripod just won't let you get low enough to do it, even if you have one of those small flexible ones, then resting your camera on a small little beanbag can be a life-changing situation. So this will prevent you from having to find some dumb little rock or stick to balance your camera on, and it's just a little bean bag. Toss it in your camera bag anytime you're planning on doing macro shots in the forest. The 8th tip I have is to look for pathways within the forest. And these make great subjects because you got a leading line that can usually lead into infinity or to a certain subject within distance. So I like to look for stone trails, pathways carved out in trails, or even just game trails. So this is little pathways where animals walk through. So like foxes or deers will often navigate the same pathways as they navigate forests. And you can use these pathways for compositions or to help get to certain areas that would otherwise be covered with a ton of brush or plants over them. The 9th tip I have is to always bring a wide angle lens. And the reason I love doing this is for upward looking shots. So one of my favorite things to do in forests is to lay on the ground with like a 10 or 12 millimeter lens and then just look straight up and get a cool shot of all of those trees and the leaves above. And this can be a particularly cool shot if you're laying right next to a giant tree, for example, because you can get that tree in the shot as a leading line and just get a really cool shot. One final tip for wide angle lenses, and this is a tip that's gotten me out of a lot of sticky situations. So if you're in a position where you can't find a shot in a forest that works for you, one little out you can have is to take a photo on your phone of a shot and then use your wide angle lens to take a photo of your phone taking that photo. So it's a cool way to get a shot of a shot, and the composition in your phone doesn't have to be nearly as strong. So for those days where you're struggling, get a minor composition in your phone and then take a photo with a wide angle lens and it looks like you're holding your phone in your hand. And it's a nice little Instagram shot. The 10th tip I have is for rainforests. So if you're ever in a place where it's just raining all the time, and even when it's not raining, all the leaves are dripping because it's just such a humid environment, you can buy little tiny umbrellas that you can put in your pocket. And what I like to do is you can just pop up this little umbrella over your camera tripod for whenever you're taking shots. So it'll just save you the hassle of always shooting through a bag, which can get tiring, or just always being wet, which can be tiring as well. So that little umbrella can be a lifesaver. So those are my 10 tips for forest photography. Let's go ahead and jump into the next video.